Nothing like good old punch to the jaw to wake you up in the morning. Although it's not the morning, it's the afternoon. It's 2 o'clock here Pacific time on the left coast, and those of you on the East Coast, it's 5 o'clock. It's like practically dinner time. Well, anyway, it's the last second live stream. I am Aaron Lopresti. This is Aaron Live, and we are here to do work, people. That's what we're here for. I always say, if I can work, I might as well let people watch while I work. I've never said that before, but I'm saying it now, so you can quote me on it right now. I don't expect that there's a ton of people here right now, and I wouldn't be disappointed there isn't. But Killer Squid is here. He's the first one in the house. You know what you get for that, Killer Squid? You get absolutely nothing but my lifelong gratitude and appreciation. Thank you for joining us. Stephen Ing is here, lunchtime and Wi-Fi. How about that? Stephen's got a late lunch, but he's a West Coaster. So, depending on what time you start work, this could be perfect lunchtime. Bill Maxwell is here. Bill tends to be here quite a bit as well. Nomad Damon is here. AJ is here. Nomad Damon, it's like watching ink dry. You know what? When I think maybe you should watch this. There you go. Maybe that'll wake you up. Lloyd. See, Lloyd is nice. Lloyd say, Aaron, have a wonderful stream. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you. That's how you get along with the host right there. Just be nice. Okay, so a couple announcements. One, you'll notice I ran the Wraith of God trailer, which I haven't done regularly for quite some time. But if you can recall, if you go way back to when you first saw that trailer, maybe back in August of last year, well, now you're about to see the book. Not this live stream, but very, very soon. It has shipped. It's on a truck, many pallets, I would assume, because we've got a few thousand copies coming. And they're on the way to my humble abode. I will then take them out of the box, put them in a new box, and ship them to you. And that's going to start next week. So I, of course, am praying and assuming that all the books are fine. There's no issues. They're going to show up. I'm going to open the box and go, yay. And out the door they go to you. So let's trust that's the case. So anyway, that's really exciting news. I'm excited. It's been this book has been stuck in printing purgatory for 2 months, which is very, very frustrating. But welcome to Joe Biden's America. So anyway, but we're through all that. It looks like the books are on a truck. They're on their way here. So yay. But which also then reminds me, I've got other stuff coming up. I'm not one to sit around on my laurels. I don't even know what a laurel is. And if I had one, I probably wouldn't sit on it because it would devalue it. But I am working. And what am I working on? I'm working on the next campaign because there's always got to be another book after the last one, right? Keep the story moving along. And so that's what we're doing. So some of you may have seen this on your local social media outlet. This is the colored, as far as I know right now, final version, but things change, of the wraparound cover for Wraith of God Blood Hunters. This will be the next book that Empire Comics, also known as me, will be putting out for you guys, hopefully to enjoy. Of course, it's a follow-up to the Wraith of God graphic novel, which will, again, be with us shortly. And so this, what we're going to do is, because the printing took so much longer and screwed up my schedule that I had originally laid out, we are going to open up the sign-up for this campaign on Sunday. What does that mean? Not much. It means that you give me your email address, and that's pretty much it. So I have a record of interested people in the project, and this will be open through fulfillment. And once fulfillment is done, then the next campaign will immediately go live, and that's when you can start ordering the book and whatever else may be on the campaign that interests you. But this is just kind of to get your interest up and let you know things are happening. So that is, of course, the wraparound for the next project, Blazing Saddles taught me what a laurel is, says Wiley Draws. That's a great movie, very funny. Lloyd Burton's like, yes, next campaign. Yeah, it does feel kind of odd to be talking about the next campaign when I haven't shipped out the first one, but in true comic book fashion, right? We want to get back to the good old days where this stuff was coming out regularly and it was right on its heels. And that's kind of my goal, is to keep it moving. I don't want these large gaps of 2 or 3 months in between projects. I want to keep moving on it. So you guys don't have to wait as long for the next book. So anyway, let's take a look also at some other stuff. So you're saying, well, Aaron, gosh, why would I give you, my email address? What's really the point? Well, the point is that if you give me your email address and then you go on to order the next book, you're going to get this groovy limited edition Merv trading card. Now, this is Merv the Astro Chimp. He is partners with Kit Carter, the Space Galactic Ranger. And so if you want a monkey in space card, the only way you can get it is by signing up early for the next campaign and then ordering when a campaign launches. It's just simple math. Shelley will back me up on that. I'm coloring this right now, so maybe I'll have a color version by the show Sunday evening. We'll see. But anyway, that's what you'll get if you sign up early for the next campaign and order, of course. And what else do I have to show you? I know you want more. Well, I'll show you one other thing that's going to be available in the next campaign. This is what we like to call, courtesy of our good friend Dale Keown, called really exploiting his art to the nth degree. This, of course, will be the Bloody Werewolf t-shirt that will be also available on the campaign. We're going to have Garbage Man shot glasses to go along with the Wraith of God shot glasses. If you're into that kind of thing, they'll be available. These t-shirts, hopefully along with an Empire Comics t-shirt and also an Empire Comics hat. So we're going full swag and going to give you guys plenty of options to get dressed up in your favorite Lopresti-verse gear. And just moving forward like everybody is, right? We're all sort of pushing our companies and our campaigns and our characters and right into your living room. I'm driving right up into your living room, unpacking the truck and dumping it right in your living room. So you have the mess to clean up instead of me. But anyway, so this is an option for you, will be to buy the really, really cool Dale Keown Werewolf t-shirt. And there'll be more stuff coming up for the campaign that I will be announcing as it gets finished. And so there's a lot of stuff in development, as we like to say. All right, I'm going to check the chat one more time, and then I'm going to start inking with a brush some Garbage Man. I'm only doing it because Mike S. Miller continues to taunt me, suggesting that maybe I can't ink with a brush, but I really can. Lloyd Burton, of course, is here. Oh, look at that. Lloyd Burton saying you're nice and talented. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you very much, actually. AJ says that inked Wraith of God 2 cover is looking good back there on the board. Oh, yeah, that's the Tales of Suspense one. I'll show that once I get the lettering across the top done. I'll show it again, I should say. Jeff Potts is here. Jeff Potts, of course, is saying a laurel is a wreath of leaves. Of course it is, but why would you sit on it? Shelley's here. She's promoting the cover on the background back there. It's like, where's Waldo? You can see little bits and pieces of my campaign. Is that a green puppet back there? I don't know. The hardest man working in the comics biz, that's me. And I'm not getting any younger either. Let's see here. I love Lloyd. I love his attitude. Keep it coming, Aaron. Just take my money. That's what I want to hear. That's the kind of compliance I'm looking for. And of course, David Williams is like, shut up and get to work. When did Mike taunt me? When does Mike not taunt me? Let's see here. Oh, Jeff is saying I'm resting on my laurels, not sitting on them. So I don't even know the proper saying. So it's, I don't want to rest on my laurels, nor do I want to sit on them. But see, if you're resting on them, then you'd be laying on them, right? Which is even worse than sitting on them. I think. Kevin Thomas. Hi, Aaron. Loving that Tales. He's talking, of course, the Tales of Suspense. All right, I'll get it. Jeez. It hasn't progressed a bit since the last time I showed it, but here we are. So this is the Tales of Suspense version. So and it's going to say Wraith of God, Blood Hunters up there, featuring Garbage Man and the Nightclub, and then we have a little inset there of Garbage Man and of Wraith of God in the middle, and then Garbage Man over here, and the Nightclub over here, plus this elephant dude. They're fighting this elephant dude. And wait a minute, who's this mysterious figure in space back here? Well, that's none other than Eon Chance, a new character that will be introduced in the Nightclub story, and might also show up in the Garbage Man story. You never know. So anyway, and then of course, if we hit stretch goals, Kit Carter will also be added to this. So you'll be looking at 4 stories: a Wraith of God, big Wraith of God story, and then Garbage Man, Nightclub, and potentially Kit Carter as well. So, my goodness, you don't want to miss this, and neither do I. All I have to do now is draw it. But that's what I do for a living, so I think I can handle it. Jeff says, I got to pick up the dog from daycare and head home. See you guys later. Thanks, Jeff, for joining us, even for a short bit of time. We appreciate it. AJ's got to have Kit Carter. Well, you're going to, push your friends into backing the next campaign, and you will get Kit Carter, my friend. You will get it. All right. Lloyd, sign up soon. Yeah, I think we're going to do it on Sunday. Shelly's telling me what to do, and she said, Lou, you should do this on Sunday. So I said, okay. So signups will start on Sunday, probably during our show. How about that? Okay. So let me switch cameras to the very nice, very clear, very sharp Razor Kaio. Okay. Let's see what we got here. I have flattened out the table. So here's the first page to the story. This is what we're going to be inking. We're going to be inking this big Garbage Man head because I just want to ink it because I think it'll look really cool, especially with all the black in there. So we have Garbage Man sitting in the woods, Garbage Man contemplation. Oh, we see, some decayed feet walking through the woods. Garbage Man is, what the heck is that? And then, boom, it's a zombie walking through the woods. And of course, you can see how I Eisnered or Strankoed up the cover by putting in the title, Night of the Living Jed. So how about that? So these 2 pages will be inked and colored, and on the campaign page when it launches in August, along with the first 3 pages of the Wraith of God story, will be penciled, inked, and colored, and on that, and maybe a few other things. So, but we got to get them done before I can put them on the campaign page, right? So this is a number 2 Raphael Kolinsky, made in France. So it's got to be good. Shelley will vouch for that. 8404 series. Now, I've been told these have been canceled, which makes me want to cry because they're my favorite brush. But I've been told that the 8406 or 8606 or something, the other series, is still available. And I don't really know the difference. Between the brushes. So I'm going to have to order some of those other ones and see how they work out. But the size is a number 2. I'm using, what am I using? I'm using a weird mixture of super black speedball ink and some other ink. It always cracks me up. These things always say, oh yeah, it's super black and it's incredibly black and oh, it's so dark, and then you get it and it's like ink wash. Like, can anybody actually make black ink? But anyway, the trick, of course, is if your ink is not as black as you'd like it, you leave the cap off for a week or so, and let some of the water evaporate out of it, and it gets black pretty quick. But you got to be careful because it can get kind of thick and varnishy, and then it's a little bit harder to use. So be aware of this. And again, normally I do this with a pen because I'm kind of going in that mode, but because of the pressure I've been getting from fellow artists, I've got to prove I can still use a brush. So, Steven has a pro tip. When receiving your book shipment off the truck, take a peek at the bottom level of the boxes. Sometimes forklift operators take a bad angle and stab the tips into the product. Well, I'm hoping that that they're on pallets and that they won't be that dumb. But believe me, Stephen, I will be checking every box as painstakingly as it may be. I did also demand double-walled boxes for shipping the books and for extra protection. So, see, I spare no expense for you guys. Aaron is quite liberal with his pro tips. I actually like to think that I'm conservative with my pro tips. Anyway, can Mike prove that he still does comics? I heard he only does NFTs now. That's true, but that doesn't keep him from making fun of me for not using a brush. So I'm going to brush. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the brush line. Get my stupid camera where I want it. There we go. All right. Hope you guys appreciate the fact that I have to straddle this camera just so you guys can see what I'm doing. You can really do, let me get in here a little bit closer. You can see how easy it is to change the width of the line simply by the pressure you're applying on it. I know it's hard to, hang on a second here. Let me see if I can get maybe this over here. And let's see if I can turn this. So my hand, it doesn't exactly, there we go, maybe this will work. So you can get a thin line, you can get a thick line, all by pressure. And if you move your hand slow enough, you can get more of an angled look or a curved look, depending on what you prefer. The thing I have to remember, this is a really big image. So I want these lines to be, I'm tempted to do really delicate, thin lines, but the problem is on something this big, you really want it thicker and a little bit bolder.
Got a nice super chat from Billy there.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Oh.
So nice.
The Toochmeister. What is Billy? Billy, $5. Thank you so much. Wow. Do you prefer to push or pull the brush? That said, and of course we understand, but Debbie and I will miss you guys at SDCC this year. We're going to miss you guys too. It's very weird not going. This has been like, 30 straight years or something, and I'm not going. It feels very strange. But I do both, William. I push and pull the brush, depending on how I want the feather lines to look. Like, for example, right here, I could go in and it's easier to go from thin to thick like this. you can get a much more controlled look. Okay. On the feathering, when you go like that. But I've also done, if you want to get a maybe a bit looser crosshatch going, that would be called pulling, I believe, and this would be called pushing, where you come out and, right? So I might push a little, then I might, where are we at? There it is. I might go in here and pull a bit. And then I'll get quicker. I want a little bit looser. So, I mean, it just depends on the mood I'm in. But generally, if I really want a controlled line, I'm going to go from thin to thick. And I guess that would be pushing. Would it be pulling? I don't know. I really don't. Terminology is not my thing. I used to go into the art supply store when I was working as a professional artist. And I'd ask for stuff. And they would laugh at me because I didn't know what the proper terminology was for certain things. And I finally said to one of the people that was mocking me, I said, you know what? I may not know the lingo, but I can tell you this. I said, I'm doing this professionally, and you're working in an art supply store, so cut me some slack, will you? And that always shut them up. It's not a very nice thing to do, but, they piss me off. Not that there's anything wrong with working in a art supply store. That'd be, to me, like, kind of fun. Like working in a comic book shop would be kind of fun. Well, working in a comic shop would have probably used to have been fun when I enjoyed the comics more. But you can see there's a I use a variety of techniques here. But it's so important that you lock your hand down like this, and then you make your lines like this, so you're getting that consistent curve and things of that nature. I usually wait to do the feathering lines until after I've been kind of inking for a bit, so kind of have a better feel for the brush and stuff. But Billy's super chat pushed me right to the edge. Anyway, so that's a quick little look at some of the feathering lines there. I think a pull line is when you go from thin to thick, and a push line is when you push out from the black, so you have less control, but you get a little bit looser or softer look. So it really depends on what you're going for. Wrightson was a guy that, for the most part, pushed out when he was brush inking from the blacks to create his feather lines, so they were a little bit more organic feeling. And you can see how I can, when I'm drawing this line, I can push down, get kind of like a clump right there, a spot of ink, to kind of create texture and different width. It's all about pressure and moving your hand fast enough so that you don't get like jiggly lines, but not so fast that you lose control of the line. And see that feathering I did right there, that's kind of pushing out. But it's very short feather lines, so it's very easy to maintain control of those short feather lines even when you're pushing out like this. Whereas longer ones, it's really hard. And I'm not, because I'm been mostly a penciler for most of my life, even though I can ink, I don't ink every day, right? And sometimes I don't ink every week. Sometimes I don't ink every month. So I don't quite have the level of control and expertise that guys like, Gary Martin or, somebody like Matt Ryan, who's inked me on a ton of stuff at DC and Marvel and CrossGen, because they do it every single day, and they're just, I have a level of control that I've been able to maintain over the years, but I never got to that just like totally, next level of control that some of those guys have, because I just was not regularly doing it. And I've kind of, again, as I've grown older, I've sort of not been such a slave to control as I used to be either. Because I do like to have a little bit of a looseness. So I don't ink the character right out of the line work. And then it just becomes like a piece of porcelain, which to me is not very interesting to look at. But again, generally I'll go and do all the outline stuff first and then work in and do the feathering. Kevin Thomas is part of the family now. Thank you, Kevin, but don't call me up asking for money. Be the kind of family member that we love to have at Christmas time, not the one we dread. I'm just joking, of course. Kevin Thomas has the Howard the Duck for President logo from 1976 that Bernie Wrightson drew. How about that on his little avatar? Dawn's still rolling out the poor jokes. Better save those for Sunday. I can't watch as closely on the chat. So I can't have the disdain for your humor that maybe you were hoping that I would have, because it may be sliding by me. But see, I can make that chunky like that just by the pressure I apply. And something like this, these are like little sticks and twigs sticking out of garbage man, so we don't want them to be like these perfect lines. So I may have drawn them as straight lines or straight even lines, but since I'm making it myself, I have the freedom to kind of go in there, obviously, and change them and make them a little rougher. as I've kind of pointed out before, drawing Garbage Man is always a little bit of a challenge to kind of figure out, what I want sticking out of his body in terms of trash. A lot of times it's super easy just to do the twigs and things like that because he is mostly dirt. And, so you can have little wood pieces and organic, leaves and things like that. I should draw more leaves sticking out of them probably. Now, I'm not promising that I'm going to be doing any more brush inking in this book, other than this page right here, just to kind of prove my value to doubters out there, because this was all pen, as far as I remember. The solid blacks on Garbage Man here in the foreground were all put on with the brush, but and maybe some of that blacks back there with the trees and stuff were all brush. You can see how shiny it is. But yeah, I'm still going to stick with my my newly adopted pen inking after I prove my point here on this big head. Now, Dan Lawless expressed an interest in coloring this story, so I have to kind of check with him very shortly and see if he wants to still do it. I assume he does. And then I'll just get these pages out to him right away, these first two, so we can get them colored and have them ready for the campaign. It's the weirdest thing, trying to prep for the next campaign when I'm still waiting on the books to ship out to you guys from the first one. But again, there has to be overlap, or you'd be looking at, me completing the fulfillment and then starting up on all this stuff, and then it would be 3 or 4 months before I'd launch the campaign, and then it would be even longer before you'd be able to get the next book. So, but like I said, I'm not asking for anybody's financial support on the new campaign until everything is fulfilled, and that you can trust me. But it's weird for me because I've already read the book. Obviously I wrote it and I drew it and I proofread it about 100 times. So it's like, I'm ready for the next issue, right? I need to start working on it. You guys haven't even read the first one yet. You're still waiting on the first one. So I have to remember that, especially not to give away anything. And I'll remind all you guys that too, that, obviously there's going to be people that get their books first, and there's going to be people that get their books last, which is the unfortunate reality of it. Nothing personal. But if you get your book first, remember not to post any spoilers for the people that are still waiting on theirs. Because it is that kind of story. There is a bunch of spoilers in it. And or potential spoilers in it. I remember once having a conversation with Gary Martin back in the good old days when we were in a studio together, Studio Saurus here in Portland, Oregon. And I can't remember what I was going to say. As my mom used to say, must not have been important. No, doggone, what was I going to say? Had something to do with inking, I'm sure. Wow, that's really annoying. I'm sure it was a brilliant story, too. See, I have the freedom to go in and, just add that if I want to. Whereas an inker would, probably wouldn't, unless I gave him explicit instructions, said, hey, if you want to go ahead and mess around with it and add some stuff, feel free. Like I did that with Danny Mickey on the Garbage Man piece that he inked for me that's in the trade paperback. He put a lot of, shall we say, extra zest into that, and there was a ton in there already. So it's really quite a piece. I did contact Dark Horse about getting more copies of Garbage Man for the next campaign, and I am waiting to hear back on that and see if they have any Power Cubed as well, because I know there's a few of you out there that wanted to get some copies of that. So I want to keep that stuff available as long as I can, because the Power Cube stuff is, I don't know, if I'm going to do anything with it moving forward or not. But they are characters that could potentially show up in a crossover type thing. But Garbage Man, I'm clearly going to be doing more stuff with, so that trade paperback becomes more and more relevant as I add more and more stories. And again, you don't have to, I'm not trying to say that in order to keep up, you have to read the trade paperback. But I'm just assuming that there will be people, especially that when they get this next campaign and there's a new Garbage Man story in there, they may go, well, wait a minute. How do I get the, the backstory and all that kind of stuff? Well, you get it through the trade paperback. If you didn't buy the original miniseries when it came out. And see right here, I just kind of opened up, that shadow with a little bit of line work there, which again, that's just something I kind of do by feel. And it's not something that I would probably put in the pencils. So it's something that would not show up in an ink job unless I did it myself. Now you can see how delicate and nice those, where is it? Right there, those lines I just did. Okay, and that's the thing. Once you get rolling with your brush and you're kind of feeling it, and you don't have quite as much ink on the brush, you can really do some nice detailed work. The problem is you've got to keep your focus while you're doing it, or it can get pretty crummy looking. At least for me it can. Cue the dog. So the kind of silly thing about it is you look at that again. I mean, that's kind of cool from just a technique standpoint, but it's probably going to close up when I ink it anyway, or when it prints anyway, so no one's going to notice or care. But it's always difficult to sort of that fine balance between getting overly enamored with line work and just doing what's necessary to tell the story. Because like I said, a lot of time that line work is not going to really come out in the printed version. And once you put color over the top of it, it makes it even harder to see. Now, if I ever did an artist edition or something, where it's printed full size, then, and then you would see that stuff. But for the printed work, it's kind of like, am I just spending a lot of time for nothing? See, those lines I just did pushing out were much harder to do because of the length of them. They would have been if I pulled them. So I'm going to try and blend these cross hatches in here into the shadow. And let's see how it turns out. Yeah, hang on a second here. And also, as your eyesight gets worse with age, this is harder to do. So yeah, that's all going to close up, and I just spent a bunch of time for really no reason. But just to show Mike Miller, I can still do it. This would be much easier, more like kind of almost like scribbling if I was doing it with a pen. That's the one thing that's really hard and time consuming with a brush is cross hatching. And it's so easy with a pen. Let's see, what's everybody saying? That's I think my main account, NornRed2 Turbo, is blocked on here. My chats haven't been showing up. I don't know why you'd be blocked. I mean, I've never blocked anybody unless, one of the mods got aggressive and did something. I don't know. I don't even know how to check. But I apologize if you're putting super chats in there and I'm not seeing them. I'm sorry. No one's going to accuse me of being tech savvy. All right, so all this over here is going to be solid black, so I'll mess with that later. I don't know why I left that there. Okay. Let's see here. Artist edition, don't tease. Yeah, well, an excellent question. If Garbage Man worked with your Garbage Man, would he pick himself up? Oh boy. There you go. Took me a little bit to find it, but Marcus Killigrew, hey, a brush, awesome. What was this? I had that happen on Mandy's channel, the block. She was able to fix it. Oh, geez. Okay. Well, I can't do it right now, but I will check. That's all right. And I know it happens randomly. Also, at least I can still chat here. I'll see if there's I mean, like I said, I have no clue, but I'll go in and look once this is over. And it's Norn Rad, right? Or no, it's yeah. What was it? Norn Rad 2 or something? Yeah, Norn Rad 2 Turbo is blocked. I will check and see what I can find out. I don't really, again, like I said, I don't really understand why something like that would happen. But if I can fix it, I will. All right, so let's get in here and do some more feathering, shall we? And again, the less ink you have on the brush, the easier it is to do this delicate feathering. And of course, I always make the feather get closer together as it gets into the black, so you get that kind of feeling that it's fading in and out of the black. So you can see right there. And as an anchor, there's always just a certain level of interpretation. You see certain areas, and you're not exactly 100% sure of what the penciler may or may not have had in mind. So that's why it's good to have good instincts and good aesthetics, right? So even if you perhaps misinterpret some line work, it still looks good. Those lines right there are kind of messy, so I'm just sort of kind of doing a loose interpretation. Well, I also talked with the artist that I have that's going to be doing the third cover in the Wraith of God campaign, Blood Hunters campaign, and he's still on board. So I'm not going to announce anything until I actually have the artwork in hand, because you know how that goes. And as our good friend Scotty on Star Trek once said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So I have learned my lesson about trusting people, and that's kind of a cynical attitude to have. But when you need stuff done and you need it done at a certain time, and just because someone says they're going to do it, doesn't mean it's going to get done. So you get in there close and see all the groovy line work I'm doing around that nose, trying to keep it, not overly tight, so that it will feel kind of softer and more organic. I know I'm probably going up against Friday Night Tights right now, aren't I? Maybe not the wisest decision, but the great thing about these process videos, I guess, is you can always go back and watch them. I gotta start publishing some more pre-made videos too. Just some shorter ones, some informative ones. I've got some ideas for some things. But I do have actually a decent selection of pre-made videos, because that's what I started this channel on. It was not live streaming, but doing prepared videos. So there's quite a few of them archived. Unfortunately, most of them are comic book related. So, unless you're totally into comic collecting or comic history, they may not be of much interest to you. But there are several art technique ones as well. But you're never going to get me doing the videos where I'm ripping on people and, doing politics and stuff like that. I just think that, I don't know, let's just say there's other people who do that way better than I do it. And so I shall leave that to them. Where are we at? Let's pull this back just a little bit. There's something incredibly satisfying about inking, though, because you're taking an unfinished drawing and making it a finished drawing. And it's easy to see why you would get impatient, and say, oh yeah, it looks really cool, but look at all these lines I got to ink and just this lip, before I'm done. And so the temptation is to kind of jump in there and just start doing it quickly to get it done. But you must maintain your control. Thank you, old man. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you, and I do mean that sincerely. Yeah, we're all thankful for that done. But like I said, save the good stuff for Sunday when I'm paying attention. All right. Let's see here if I can back up a hair or back the camera up a hair, and I've got some more outlining here to do. So this is all, back here is all going to be black, which will really set off these inset panels nicely, I think. I'll put a little nail on the top of his head there. All right, let's get to the gateway of the soul, the eyes. God, I tell you, I love this camera, man. So funny, I grew up literally using a brush because that was the recommended tool in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, which I know everybody's got that book, but I actually got it when it came out the first time. But it didn't really discuss technique on how to use the brush to get what you want. And I essentially learned that from Gary Martin. And then sort of took what I learned from Gary and just sort of applied it my own way. And I mean, there's the old adage, and it's really true, that you can't break the rules until you learn the rules, right? Otherwise, you're just sort of meandering all over the place, and you're not really growing as an artist. You're just kind of being messy, which is what I was doing with inking. And when I sort of understood how to use the tools correctly to get the effect that I wanted, then I could start, and also understanding the rules, if you will, as to why you do things a certain way. And then you sort of once you get a handle on that, then you can start breaking the rules to get what you want, or to get a new effect or something. But I don't think the foundation ever changes that you learned. Michael Golden's another guy that just has wonderful control. I don't know if he still does, but his comic book work he all did, with a brush, and even that really crazy stuff that he was doing in the 80s, really great control, line work type stuff. And he used a number 3 brush, whereas I use a number 2. And a number 3 brush, to me, was, when I found that out, was amazing. Number 3 holds a lot of ink, and it's really hard to get, fine detail ink lines when your brush has a lot of ink in it, because it just tends to want to come out, and you end up with this thicker lines. You may still have the control, but the lines are going to be thicker, or it's harder to keep them thinner, I should say. But he was able to do it. Of course, he's Michael Golden, and I'm not, so. But ultimately, even if you're doing something really, like this, where I'm sort of brushing pretty quickly here, it's all about pressure. And if you can keep a light touch, you can get those fine lines, like I'm doing right now, rather quickly. But it's difficult to maintain that that control and that flow at the same time. See, and again, you spend all this time kind of worrying about what these little tiny lines right there look like, and no one, when this prints, no one's going to give a rip. Except Mike Miller. See, again here, because I'm getting to the point where I don't have a lot of ink on the brush, I'm able to kind of go in there and do these thin feathering lines pretty easily. But again, I may be doing it faster, but I'm not pressing very hard at all. I'm just kind of wisping across the top of the paper. I love putting these veins in here, but I don't really know why Garbage Man would have veins. But it seems to work. That type of stuff seems to work well with this type of creature, right? Oh yeah, give him a lot of veins. See a nice little row of feathering lines right there. And I'm going to come in this way and do just a little, if I can get a line, just a little bit of cross hatching in here. And again, for no good reason, because it's not going to show. But, if you want to impress the chicks, you've got to be able to do line work. Of course, that's absolutely not true, but it sounded good. You can get these short kind of jerking motions to get sort of more of an angular look to the work. I used to be so uptight about every little line. And you can see when you're doing stuff like this how easy it is to get caught up in that. But I really do think that, if you have this sort of elite perfection to your line work, that you lose something. Bolin doesn't seem to, but most everybody else does. It's just kind of like you ink the life out of your drawing, but that's kind of Bolin's shtick, though. But I'm not. I mean, obviously, I'm a big Wrightson influence, and Wrightson's work and Frazetta's work also. Neil Adams, these guys are all very organic in their work. And so I don't want my stuff to be too rigid. I want it to have that organic quality that, I learned from my influences. But the problem is when you start, really zooming in and zeroing in on a couple of lines, you can't help but make them have this desire to make them really perfect. And then when you do that, a lot of times you end up losing that spontaneity that you want. So it's kind of a weird thing. And I'll add some veininess here. A dog just walked in and dropped a shoe at my feet. Which usually means he wants fed. You know what? He's not going to starve to death. Not around here, he's not. All this veininess right in there around the eye and stuff sort of takes on a very much a Wrightson-y kind of quality. Like I often say, you can really see the Wrightson influence in my work when I'm drawing monsters. You don't even see it at all when I'm doing superhero work, which is bizarre, right? That you would have like different styles. But I don't really feel like I have different styles. I have different approaches, I guess, to different subject matter. Might be a better way of putting it. Oh, it's way too early for that dog to get fed. There's no way I'm giving them food. As much as dogs beg for food, you think they're constantly starving. Of course, as much as I eat, you figure I was constantly starving as well. Yes, I know that to be true, Marcus, but like you go back to the Killing Joke days and stuff, it wasn't, and that was just all brushwork, and it's just stunning how much control that dude had, or used to have anyway. Let's see if I can get caught up a little bit here in the chat. You mentioned doing 2 books a year. Could you see yourself hiring somebody to do additional books? I'm specifically thinking of an Empire Comics Presents type book with a few shots from different creators, few shorts. If I felt people would actually buy it, that's almost what this book was. And of course, I think you mean by other creatives, maybe artists and writers just using some of my characters. Well, eventually, to keep the books coming out, I'm going to have to do that if I continue to expand like I want to. But again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse on some of this stuff. I've got to get there first. But yeah, I can see myself doing that. But I'd be very particular about who I would get to draw it, or if I had someone else write a story for me, I'd be very particular. So it'd have to be the right person in the right situation. think you need to wipe this off. There you go. I think that'll help. Let's see here. Lady Shelley Hope. Okay. This is interesting. I mean, it really is. What people are going to be able to how they're going to be able to maintain it and keep it going, and because it is a lot of work and it is fatiguing. Yes, I have to say that the first book or first collection, the miniseries I did through Dark Horse, and the collection did not sell well, which doesn't really mean anything, but because I think it was felt more like an old Image book than it felt like a Dark Horse book. So it might not have hit the right audience. But when you do a project and it doesn't do well, you're sort of like, well, time to move on. But then I realize there's always that possibility that it gets discovered by a whole new audience later, and then there becomes maybe a desire to see more of it. I mean, it's really a fun book. I mean, if you like sort of like humorous adventure story type stuff. I mean, I'd never say never, right? But it's difficult to discuss future plans because there's so many spoilers in Wraith of God that me talking about future plans might ruin some of the surprises that are in store for you guys for that graphic novel. So I'm going to be much more open about, talking about plans and things like that after everybody has the Wraith of God graphic novel and everybody's up to speed. And then, I can discuss more possibilities. Well, in a nutshell, Mighty Magic, he was a lawyer that was working for a giant pharmaceutical company. He found some not above water financial dealings, and he really didn't have the intention of turning them in or anything. He was just doing his job, what he thought his job was. But once he discovered some things they didn't want him to discover, they felt it would be better that if he was just out of the way. So there was this sort of evil scientist that was working for the pharmaceutical company that was doing experimentation with military type stuff and for military use, super soldiers, that type of thing, Captain America type stuff, and couldn't get the formula right. So he would, experiment on homeless people or whoever he could, get his hands on that he didn't think would be missed. And so when they had to get rid of this lawyer, they did a little experimentation on him that went wrong. And through a series of events, ended up becoming Garbage Man. And so basically the whole trade paperback that is available through the campaign as well on Amazon. He's looking for sort of his redemption story to figure out who he is going forward. Is there any hope that he can be changed back to a human being? And, is he going to settle for revenge or, and plus he fights a bunch of monsters. So it's not a terribly, innovative origin story because Garbage Man was intended really to be sort of a replacement for Swamp Thing at DC. And then when they were able to get Swamp Thing back, from Vertigo and implement them into the proper DCU or the DCU proper. Garbage Man no longer had a place at DC, so that's why I have him back in my possession, and I can do whatever I want to with him. As long as I get paid for my lyrics on it. GJ Martinez says, Aaron Lepresti, the colors on the wraparound cover look fantastic. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Nomad Damon says, I'd love to see more of that dinosaur story you showed off recently. Yeah, so would I. It's potential. Well, that's a good question about Eon Chance. You may not get that answered, though, clearly. He's a very mysterious character. He was once a clean lawyer who became a dirty lawyer. That's exactly right. Thank you, Past Master Dan. You gave him the boo, so I didn't have to. Says, I like the genres you're working in. Well, thank you, sir. I'm working in all of them, quite frankly. I've got a sci-fi thing going. Well, you know, the funny thing is, if you backed the book, which I assume most of you did, close. There's a one of the stretch goals was a bulletin page. You know, very similar to the old Marvel bullpen bulletin page, and it does discuss other projects. So those of you who, you know, are into that bigger universe type stuff, and also kind of nostalgia hounds for the old Marvel books, or the way they were done, I think you'll get a real kick out of it. And of course, future bulletin pages will all be stretch goal, easily obtainable stretch goals. So, you know, they hopefully will be a regular occurrence in all the Empire Comics books going forward. But I may have to do a couple of anthologies, just of, you know, 10-page stories, just to get everything out there and in the open, and then sort of you know, go from there for, you know, bigger projects for the individual characters. But I do have long-term plans for Wraith of God that are integral to the Lopresti-verse. So he has to remain a main feature for a while. And I we'll see how this campaign does, but I wouldn't mind going forward doing anthology type campaigns with a, you know, Wraith of God lead story, and then, you know, introducing some of the other characters in shorter stories that back up the Wraith of God. That way I can get everything out there, and where are we at? You get everything out there in a much more reasonable amount of time, and then sort of see about maybe doing longer individual projects with the different characters. That is kind of the problem, though. You got this universe and one person doing all of them. And of course, the time it takes to crowdfund, no one except, maybe Ethan is far enough ahead financially and all this stuff that they could, literally start publishing multiple books at the same time, which I don't really think he wants to do that. I think he just kind of wants to do his own thing. And also, you have to have a lot of good ideas, right? And you never know if you have a lot of good ideas until you put them out there, and people let you know if your ideas are good or not. We all think we have a lot of good ideas, but that doesn't mean we do. But I do have a pretty solid big picture idea of what I'd like to do and what I'd like to accomplish. And I feel fairly confident about the quality of the stuff. The characters and the titles. But again, something can be really, really good and still not very popular. So, there's that uncontrollable factor. I mean, I love Iron Fist, but how many people really love Iron Fist? And that was kind of always the problem with a company, a larger company like Marvel or DC or CrossGen or Dark Horse or whatever, is that, and it's a little bit different crowdfunding because the financial structure is different, but you have to sell a lot of product to be a viable company, right? And as a result, not everything you sell is going to be popular. Not everything you sell is going to be Batman, or not everything you sell is going to be Spider-Man or X-Men or whatever. But you can't just live off of one title when you're running a large company with a bunch of employees. That's not the case with, we do crowdfunding stuff, but it does make it harder to do a connected universe with multiple characters with just one person pulling all the strings. So and I think most people, they get into a situation like this and they want to do, everybody wants to do their own, create their own thing, right? So it's harder to get maybe the talent that you want to work on your project because they're like, hey, I just, how is this any different than working for Marvel or DC if I'm working for you? And the truth is there isn't. Because now instead of producing stuff for Marvel and DC, they're producing it for me. But then again, there's a lot of creators out there that don't have, ideas for series or different characters or things like that. They might have one or two ideas they'd like to pursue, but for the most part, they're still going to be relying on some company to provide them with work. So we'll see how it plays out. But I always like to dream big. I think most of us do, right? Like to sit around and if I won the lottery, what would I do? Well, I'd open up a publishing company and I'd do this, or I'd buy Marvel and I'd do it this way. Sadly, most of us never do win the lottery, so we never really get the opportunity to try that stuff out. So that's not really a vein, that's more of a root, I think, in there. Paul, not till, well, I guess September's not that far off now, but Rose City, I should be there Um, I had to cancel San Diego this year because of Shelley's surgery coming up. But the reality with cons is, if you're not working for the big two, I'm not sure what the benefit to going to a con is as great as an independent creator. I mean, to a certain degree, you've got to go out and promote your stuff, but the internet seems to be especially YouTube, seems to be a better avenue for reaching more people than going to a convention. I still enjoy going to the conventions. I just went to the Washington State SummerCon a couple weekends ago and had a good time. I still enjoy that sort of experience, but I don't really enjoy traveling that much anymore. Because most of the time Shelley can't go because I got a 90-year-old mother that lives with us, and I've got a very needy dog that doesn't like to be left with somebody else. So those are kind of problematic things. So it's like I keep thinking about, man, am I ever going to get to an East Coast con again? I don't know if I am. We'll see. But as far as West Coast, I still plan on going. I'll plan on going to San Diego next year, and just because if I don't keep my booth, I'll never get it back. So once you say goodbye to San Diego for a year, you are saying goodbye forever, and at least as an exhibitor. So I don't. It's going to be hard. Even though it's incredibly expensive, it's going to be hard not to continue to go because I don't want to lose my standing as an exhibitor and my access to the booth that I have that is incredibly expensive, but it's still, as we say, it's the cost of doing business. I think I'm going to make this solid black. I need a little bit more depth in here than I'm getting. See, I don't like having like a straight edge of shadow there. I like it to be varied, because again, to me, that makes it more organic, makes it more three-dimensional. We have like a straight line shadow across there, unless it's, a line that's dropping across somebody from like, we walk under a tree branch and that big shadow comes across there. But just for a lighting effect, it makes it seem too slick and too porcelain and loses that organic feeling that I'm always trying to get. And I found out that the origin of Black Rider is in Weird Comics number 17. Wow. Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you, Green Laser. Public domain site where I can read it. Excellent. Thank you. I'm hearing no. His daddy said you promised them a 48-page book, and that's what you should deliver. Use these pages afterwards as a whole new book. I could be wrong, and EVS is a good verbal deception. That's probably not directed at me. That's probably directed at some sort of conversation that's going on in here. Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, everybody does what, they think is right, or, by themselves in terms of their business practices. And it's going to be up to you guys to decide what you prefer. I, for one, I'm not a great businessman. And so I let sometimes my moral judgment or my feelings get in the way of making good business decisions. And I just, I feel like we're charging, $25 for a book, that you should get a pretty hefty page count for that. And it's easy to do once you start hitting certain price markers, right? Because then it becomes cheaper to actually add those extra pages. It's hard to do an 84-page book if I only raised, $40,000. But in the case where I've raised $146,000 for this, it makes it a lot easier to expand that book to 84 pages. And now you guys feel like, okay, I spent $25, but I got an 84-page book out of it. And I intend to keep operating under that guideline, that the next campaign will be promoted as a 64-page book. But if we get to 100,000, it's going to become an 84-page book, because of the added Kit Carter stuff. But it's difficult because we just by nature are not going to get the kind of numbers that Marvel and DC are going to get on their established characters like Spider-Man and Batman and things like that. So we have to charge more just to be able to do it, without going bankrupt. But I think that's the purpose of stretch goals and things like that, is to try and give you guys more for your money. But again, I'm not going to criticize someone else for, having a different philosophy on how they approach this stuff. Let's see, if you promise too much too early, then you set yourself up for, potentially a serious financial loss. But if I advertise I'm doing 64 pages and I don't make the money I thought I was going to make on it, you're still getting 64 pages, because now it becomes an integrity issue that I don't want to compromise on, even if I have to eat it. But like I said, hopefully that won't happen. Oh, I still got that lip to do. It's like, hey, look at that, I'm almost done. And I'm like, oh yeah. Big lip, lots of lines. This is interesting because there is some truth to that. You sit there and go, well, man, wouldn't it be great to do a bigger format book? But you have to, I mean, people, they do like stuff that fits, right? And yeah, the Marvel graphic novel series from the 80s, of which he is speaking of, they're, I believe, 8.5 by 11. Right? So they're not going to fit into your standard comic book bag. They're not going to fit into your standard comic book boxes. So what do you do with them? How do you store them? And that is a real issue. So even though all of us are like, oh my gosh, I'd love to do a treasury edition, or oh, I'd love to do a bigger format book, there might be resistance to it because of the convenience or the size not being convenient. Oh, where's my lip at? There it is. So those are all things like, we have to take into consideration that as just being a pure fan of it, you'd say, oh my gosh, I'd love to have a bigger format or whatever. But then it can be detrimental to, your overall sales because it's not conveniently packaged. But that stuff, when I get graphic novels like that, they go on my bookshelf, not in with my comics. So no Emerald City in August. These drives. Yeah, I'm not doing Emerald City. I am taking a stance against the city of Seattle until they get their stuff cleaned up. I'll just leave it at that. Craig Smith II wants to know, hello, Aaron. Will you ever work for Marvel and DC again? And what were your reasons for leaving? Also, who is the one character that you haven't drawn yet for Marvel and DC? Okay, chances of me working for Marvel and DC ever again are slim to none because they hate me. The reason I left was, let's see. Shall I be honest? I don't know that I necessarily left. I was oops, I get that lip over here. When AT&T fired Dan DiDio, or I should say let him go, however you want to couch that, I figured I might be in a little bit of trouble because Dan was the guy that basically brought me over from Marvel. And for 12 years, I worked for DC pretty much exclusively. Certainly, I didn't do any work for Marvel, and I didn't really foster any relationships at Marvel after I left or tried to keep any going because it was just easy. DC was keeping me busy, and so it was like I didn't really care. Which is, of course, the old adage, don't put all your eggs in one basket, which is exactly pretty much what I did. And so then that September, they then had another round of firings. And at that point, everybody that I knew and worked for was gone. So I reached out to the few people that were left that I knew and didn't get much of a response on anything. I did a couple of, I did like a Snickers ad for them with Shazam, which was actually kind of fun, and a Wonder Woman popsicle thing that went on the back of the box of popsicles, but could not get any regular work. And I sat down and I realized that I was in a position where I was going to have to go grovel to a bunch of 20-somethings that were now, the new editors and at Marvel and DC who didn't, know me from Adam or care, quite frankly. And I was just like, I just didn't want to do it again. And I realized that I was at a point where if I was going to do my own thing, that I better do it now, because I was getting close to getting aged out at Marvel and DC if I hadn't already been, and was like, how many years did I actually have before? I mean, it's seriously that they would not be even seriously considering me for anything. So I thought, okay, now's the time to do it. So, and then of course, my association with Ethan and Comicsgate, now they all hate me for that. So there's no way that they would hire me unless there's a complete overhaul, editorially, and which is fine because I'm content to do this. And the funny thing is, since I started working on Wraith of God and my own stuff, oh my gosh, talk about satisfying creative experience. It's like I see all these other great and talented artists, posting on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and stuff, and they're posting all their drawings of these characters that are owned by Marvel and DC. And I'm thinking, these guys don't own anything of their own. And not that that's going to mean anything. I mean, if you don't ever sell it for TV or movie, there's really not that much difference. But the reality is everybody gets aged out at some point. John Byrne, Kirby. Doesn't matter who you are, how great you were at one time, there's going to come a time where the industry looks at you as being irrelevant. And they're on to the next new thing and the younger person and all that kind of stuff. And plus, page rates are dropping, is my understanding at the moment. So I would be someone they wouldn't want to pay. But I guess my point is, I see these people posting their Spider-Man drawings or covers or whatever, and it doesn't feel as cool as it used to when I was younger or when I was working in the industry, because I'm like doing my own thing right now, and I own it, and I have final say. And these guys are, their whole careers are like mine was or is. Was built on properties owned by somebody else. And eventually that's going to end, whether you like it or not. And then what do you have? And so I don't really have any desire to go back to that. Now, I don't have a desire also because I'm not real fond of what they're doing with the subject matter and what they're doing with the characters. It's not something that I'm interested in. And so that makes it easier. But I'm doing what I'm doing right now essentially because I felt I had to. And I don't know that I ever would have had enough, guts to just, if everything was going full force at Marvel or DC, to just stop doing that and pursue my own thing. But because, circumstances sort of dictated that I do that, here I am. And so far, so good. Well, it's no fun to be, canceled by the industry or have some people try and cancel you from the industry, or, having publishers specifically tell people not to hang out with you or work with you, which is going on with me and others, I'm sure. That's unfortunate, but I can't do anything about it. So, it's one thing to be disliked because you did something to somebody or wronged them. But when people dislike you because they don't agree with your opinions on certain things, or they don't like someone you're associated with or friends with. It's like, that's just stupid. And I refuse to allow them to have any satisfaction, let them get to me. So that's kind of where I'm at with all that. Well, it's true, but Craig, it's been going on forever. It's been going on literally forever. So thank you for answering my question. AT acquiring DC Comics was a hush-hush move until I found out they fired Dan to do it from Ethan. I was like, a phone company bought a comics company. Yeah, it's... I think there's probably going to be a lot more movement in a negative way. Because the bigger the corporation, the more the bottom line, the dollar, is important. When Marvel owned itself and DC owned itself, they were barely getting by in for a lot of years, but they didn't have to answer anybody except themselves, right? So if they were still making a profit, even if it wasn't a large profit, still viable. But now with these huge corporations buying these companies, and these corporations are worth billions, and the company they own is generating, tens of millions of dollars in profits or less, even though they may still be profitable to a certain degree, they're not profitable enough, for them to be bothered with. And so you don't have creative people keeping the industry alive. You've got corporate accountants, and they don't care about our nostalgia or our wants and desires in terms of what kind of reading material they supply for us. And that's the thing. I mean, comics do not generate a lot of money. At least American comics don't. In terms of what corporate America would view as a lot of money. So it's like, it's easy to look at them and go, well, if we cut costs here, here, and here, we can still produce these comic books for the intellectual properties and spend half the money and still make the same pittance. Or they may just look at it and say, this isn't worth the effort, and shut everything down and just, we've got 70 years worth of reprint material. Why are we paying to create new content? Because let's face it, the new generation is mostly, their comic books are the movies. And they don't necessarily need us anymore to create IPs because they've got, like I said, 70 years worth of IPs, 70 years of storylines. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not predicting necessarily doom and gloom for mainstream. It's certainly possible, though, and something to keep your eye on, that, all the good new material may be coming out of independence here pretty soon. I mean, you could argue in some ways it already is. We're certainly seriously starting in that direction. I was seriously thinking about hand lettering this story, but I talked myself out of it pretty quick. It's like, I got enough work to do without adding to my misery. But it would be cool to have the word balloons on there. But I'd have to either do it myself, which would mean I'd have to sort of learn how to do it, or hire someone to do it, which means I would have to, every time I got a page penciled, I'd have to ship it off to the letterer, have them letter it, come back to me, and then I'd have to ink it. And then if I change my idea or change my mind on the script, which I do a lot, I mean, not the big picture usually, but, dialogue tweaks here and there. It's like, you can't do that once the, word balloon is on the page. then you're pasting up stuff over the top of it or whiting it out, and I don't want to do that either. So if I ever get a script that, once I start drawing, I'm so completely happy with it that I don't have to worry about ever changing a single word, I might have some lettering done on the board. But for now, we'll just have to suffice to have the sound effects lettering on there, which I generally do most of the time. Not in every panel, but if it feels like it needs it, I put it in there. That is the truth, man. Comics, old man, it's crazy though. Comics may not make a lot of money, but they are the backbone of billion-dollar franchises. Without them, the movies and TV shows wouldn't exist. That's true. But my point being that you don't really need new material anymore because you've got so much of it already established. But yeah, you wouldn't have any of these movies without the comics that were created, for Marvel, a lot of it in the 70s by Jim Starlin, or at least the storylines, not necessarily the characters. In Simonson, they've used so much of Walter's work. But I mean, they could do. I mean, think about it, man. They've got something like Gotham by Gaslight that Brian Augustyn and Mignola did years ago in the 80s. It was a really cool story. Can you imagine doing an Elseworld like that where, Batman hunts down Jack the Ripper? Well, that's pretty cool. Make a cool movie. So, I mean, it's not like they're hurting for material. And that's kind of my point, that at this point, they don't need new characters or even, they got, their screenwriters can come up with new story arcs, even if they don't understand the characters. It doesn't really matter because their source material now becomes the movies as opposed to the comics. But comics are still they're such a great way to tell a story. Because it's that unique combination of visuals and text. It's funny how, they started off in the 40s, and actually pre-war, but then, just hitting the peak in World War II, where they were just, cranking out stuff for cheap entertainment for kids, when kids at that time didn't have a lot of options. But then how they evolved into this just incredible art form over the years. We're seeing just some of the best illustration work, especially of the 21st century, coming out of comics. It's quite interesting, really, how it's all sort of evolved. Anyway, that's about the extent of this piece. But you can kind of see how cool when you get that heavy blacks in there, how cool that looks. And there you saw it here, folks. Did it with a brush. So even though Mike Miller didn't chime in, we can all tell him next time we see him, yeah, did you see what Aaron did with a brush? I can still do it. Now that is a great statement. Mighty Magic's backing 38 books. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sure everybody else that you're backing thanks you. Hey, Aaron, what did you think of the rights in Kickstarter? Boy, this is going to sound sacrilegious from someone who's such a huge Wrightson fan, but I'm a huge Wrightson fan pre-1980, not a huge Wrightson fan post-1980. And that Kickstarter thing, from what I could tell, was basically the art from his card set, which was sort of hit or miss for me. So yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. I did back the, well, actually participated in it as well, but the Rights and Tribute book, where basically a bunch of other artists, did like rights and homage type art type things. And I did an Uncle Creepy holding a copy of Frankenstein with a portrait of Bernie Wrightson up in it. So anyway, and there was some cool, Tony Harris has got an unbelievably good piece in there, along with several other artists. Kelly Jones has a really cool piece in there. So anyway, I ordered that book. But I didn't order, I've got to look back, which is basically Wrightson, from 1967 to 1978, his best years, with the exception of, the Frankenstein book, which was published in 1980, and the Captain Stern book that was published in 1980. Those aren't included in there, but just about everything else is of the great Wrightson stuff. So, I've got pretty much everything that he did during the years that I really, really loved his stuff. So. There you go. Yeah, there's some good artists working in that with some cool stuff. Like I said, I ordered it too, so I'm really excited to see how that all turns out, in some of the pieces that other people have done. Anyway, let's see here. Oh, see, it's 4:00. Time for my dog to eat, which means time for me to dip out of here. Hey, you guys, thanks so much for spending a little time with me while we worked on this. Again, I appreciate you guys' fantastic support, not only of the Wraith of God, but just my YouTube channel. I couldn't do this if you guys weren't there to kind of converse with and watch while I do it. I would ask kindly, if you have not, well, let me run this real quickly. Yeah, so like and subscribe to this channel if you would, please. I'd appreciate it. It helps the channel grow, or so they tell me. And also, please make sure you join Shelly and I Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific time for the actual Aaron Live show, where we do all sorts of nonsensical things. And it's usually a lot of fun. And I get to blow up a lot of people. And that's kind of what I live for these days. So, and also keep your eyes peeled for information about Wraith of God. I will let you guys know the second those books arrive here from are delivered to my doorstep, or actually my garage, and we'll start shipping those out immediately. So that's all exciting and coming on the horizon, as well as the next campaign, which will be launching in about a month. But the sign-up page will be launching Sunday, and we'll talk about that, of course, on the Sunday show as well. So anyway, everybody, thanks again. And thank you for joining us. Okay, I see it, Christian. I'll check it out. You guys, I don't even know what day is it. Friday? Oh, enjoy your weekend. How about that? I'm going to mow the lawn, and we'll see you guys Sunday night. And take care and be safe.